One additional note is that I switched Bruce Brown's position from the 3 to the 2, so I basically inverted him and Joe Harris, and I gave him a third position. He's a 3-4 and a 2. You could probably make it. He played point guard with the Pistons in his second season, and probably played some amount of 5 at some point last year. DeAndre Bembry, he's on a non-guaranteed deal, so he's not a sure thing to make the team, but he's kind of built in the same mold. He plays the 3 kind of because he can't shoot. He's more like a point forward. Or he realistically should play the 2. I think that would be his natural position, but he's not a shooter, so he's kind of just stuck in this point forward role. And maybe he's able to capture some of the magic that Bruce Brown has, as a small ball 4, cutting to the rim. But given the presence of all these guys at the 4, I don't know how many minutes are going to be available for them to do that anyway. Okay, so moving on to the Denver Nuggets. Not a ton that I was compelled to change here. The main thing I did was I switched Jeff Green from the 4 to the 3, as again, just based on the depth chart of the team. They've got Aaron Gordon at the 4, and they re-signed JaMychal Green to play the 4. And they got Niaji and Bull as the backup 5s. You can make some argument for JaMychal Green being a 5, but I'm inclined to think that they're going to at least start with these guys at the outset. And Jeff Green, he's a pretty versatile. You could make an argument for him having center as his third position also. But PJ Dozier, he missed some time with injury last year, and they don't really have anybody else at the 3 besides that. So I was comfortable making that switch. We'll see if it holds up based on how things go in the regular season. Obviously, they are without Jamal Murray for probably the entire season as he recovers from a torn ACL. Okay. Going over to the Pacers. The probably most controversial decision I had to make with them was moving Caris LeVert from the 2 to the 3. And you can see that I have him as a small forward, point guard, shooting guard, kind of reflecting. He played all 3 positions with the team last year. Given that TJ Warren doesn't seem to have a timetable and is going to be hurt, I anticipate Brogdon, Justin Holiday, and LeVert being the starters. And for Jeremy Lamb played mostly the 3 last year, but realistically he's more of a 2, and Lamb to be backing up Holiday. Edmund Sumner, he tore his Achilles, so he's out for the year, so that definitely factored into my decision to switch the positions. To switch Lamb's position from the 3 to the 2. And O'Shea Brissett, he started at the 4 at the end of last year, but that's because Miles Turner was out and Sabonis was playing the 4. So now that Turner's healthy, I just anticipate that Brissett is going to get most of the backup 3 minutes, especially since it doesn't seem like they're going to be able to count on Warren. And when PJ comes back, it's probable that he'll be playing the 4 rather than the 3, but we're going to wait for him to come back before I make that adjustment. As by the time he comes back, they may have traded Turner or something like that, and then Sabonis is the 5, and Warren makes a little more sense as the 4 once that logjam is cleared up a little bit. And they signed Torrey Craig, who 2K had him at the 3, but he actually played the 4 with the Suns and was very effective in that role. Great rebounder. He's able to take advantage of his athleticism by crashing the glass and cutting to the rim. Not dissimilar from what Bruce Brown did for the Nets. But Torrey Craig as he's a little bit bigger. He's more of a true 3 than Brown is. So he can get away with being like a small ball four in like reserve lineups. And Kalon Martin, he's on a non-guaranteed deal, but I do anticipate that he will make the team based on the depth chart as like the just the third string. He's pretty reasonable, and if TJ Warren was healthy, you could probably make an argument for Martin not making the team. It's worth noting that 2K has Martin at the 3 rather than the 4, leaving like probably I think Sabonis is the only guy that they have at the 4 on the team. Or no, they have Brissett, but yeah, I was not super thrilled with the way the 2K did their positions, as you can see from me making what's probably going to be like a 2-hour video, just going through and breaking things down. Pelicans. Really, the only thing that I felt compelled to do was switch Josh Hart, his position, from the 3 to the 4. His rebound numbers are off the charts. He rebounds like a 4. He rebounds like a 5, really. So even though they consider him like he looks like he's a small forward shooting guard, or shooting guard small forward, but I was compelled to make him a 4. He's like Brandon Ingram like Basketball Reference considers him a 4 in a lot of their lineups, but based on just like the rebounding disparity, I'm like very close to making Ingram a 2, a shooting guard, believe it or not. As he's when you look at his 6'8", 190 stature, he's actually that's pretty comparable to guys like Kevin Huerter. And he does a fair amount of like playmaking for the team, and you can see they're kind of loading up on threes. They drafted Herbert Jones and Trey Murphy. Trey Murphy I moved over from the 4 to the 3. Najee Marshall was also solid, and if we consider Josh Hart a 3, like they are loaded with guys who are 3s, and even Wenyen Gabriel has like the body of a 3 rather than a 4. So I thought another reason to have Josh Hart as a 4 is like he doesn't really play with Zion a ton either. But yeah, that's kind of where I've got their lineup at the moment. They picked up Devontae Graham and Satoransky during the year. I've got Sato as like a 1/3. Maybe I add shooting guard to those positions also, given that they're not terribly deep there. But this is partially why I can see myself moving Ingram from the 3 to the 2, as it was suggested that like Murphy could start at for the Pelicans. And if he's starting, what position is he playing? Because it sure as shit ain't the 4 ahead of Zion. So if Murphy starts, I would probably just consider Ingram the starting 2 guard. And that would make Alexander Walker the 6th man, next to Sato, Marshall, and Hart. You make an argument for like inverting Hart and Marshall, but I looked at Marshall's lineups. Even though he's bigger than Josh Hart, like he definitively played the 3. Like he played like barely any power forward last year. It was pretty much all filling in for Brandon Ingram. Oops. Okay. So the Detroit Pistons, we had to do a couple things to them, as they were a mess. Kelly Olynyk's going to start at the 5, so I had to switch him over from power forward. Cade Cunningham is going to start at the 2, so I had to move him over from point guard. Josh Jackson, they've got him listed as a 2. I've got him as a 3, as one of these two guys is going to back up Bay, probably Diallo, leaving like Josh Jackson as the 11th man and out of the rotation. And I've got Corey Joseph penciled as like the starting point guard, depending on what happens with Killian Hayes. I'm not sure if the Hayes-Cunningham backcourt pairing is going to hold up, as Hayes is probably not terribly useful off the ball. Corey Joseph, on the other hand, is, and he's a better defensive player. It just depends on how much the Pistons are trying to win, especially at the outset of the year. Yeah, and I added Luca Garza as he upgraded from a two-way to a standard contract. Basically, all the players that 2K had missing in their roster were on two-way deals. So now that Garza got signed to a standard contract, he is officially missing from 2K, from the 2K roster, and it'll be, interesting to see if they're able to get everybody added for the opening day roster, as they have like something like 35 players, I think, that are missing between standard contracts and two ways. And like one additional note, Isaiah Livers, for whatever reason, fucking 2K had him as a shooting guard, point guard. He started at the 4. You can see that he's 6'6", 230, and like for point guard to be his secondary, like he averaged 2 assists in 32 minutes in college. I don't know what the fuck they were doing there, but yeah, I had to make that correction. That was a wild one that I came across. All right, moving on to the Toronto Raptors. Right now, I have Goran Dragic penciled in as the starting point guard rather than Fred VanVleet. Dragic obviously replacing Kyle Lowry over the offseason. Dragic himself has suggested that he would prefer to come off the bench. So in that case, I will probably be adjusting VanVleet to the 1. But I wouldn't be leaving Dragic at the 1 in that case. I would probably be moving him over to the 2. As I think it makes sense to have Malachi Flynn at the 1, and Gary Trent would, in this case, I have him at the 6th man. But if VanVleet starts at the 1, then Trent is going to the 1 in the starting unit, and then we're going to consider Goran Dragic the backup 2. As I do believe I would play Malachi Flynn over Svi Mikhailiuk. Isaac Bonga's on a non-guaranteed deal. He may not make the team. And then for the 3s, Yuta Watanabe, he played the 4 last year, but due to depth chart considerations, I'm moving him down to the 3. Ish Wainwright is 6'6", 250. He is a 4, kind of in like the PJ Tucker role, or mold, I should say. Ton of strength for an undersized player, and he can hit the corner 3. So they're giving him a shot. Pascal Siakam's going to miss the first month of the year, I believe, with I forget what he hurt, but he had surgery with like a 6-month recovery period. So it's going to bleed a little into the regular season. So Chris Boucher is probably going to be the starter at the outset. We're going to count him as a 4 rather than as a 5 because they added Precious Achiuwa during the season, and Kem Birch I think is safe to pencil in as the starter. So given that they don't have a ton of depth at the 4, I think it makes sense to have Boucher there. Gillespie, I don't expect to make the team. He's on a non-guarantee, and Reggie Perry probably is going to take a... Actually, I can't say probably. I didn't do the two-way contract players on this team yet, David Johnson and Justin Champagne. But he could take one of their two-way contract slots. Most likely he's going to go to the G League and kind of wait for a call-up. All right, I guess I should mention Scottie Barnes. What I changed position from? He's a 4 in the 2K roster, and I pretty much consider him to be the de facto backup 3. Maybe you could make an argument for him playing the 4 in the absence of Siakam, but then there's no backup 3, especially since we're considering like Watanabe is kind of more of a 4 than a 3. And then you're sliding Boucher over to the 5. Like, I don't know. It's a little sketchy. All right, so going to the Rockets. Their big news for the offseason is John Wall. They're going to hold him out and try to trade him. He's never going to play again for the team. So as a result, we had to make some depth chart adjustments. Kevin Porter is going to be the starting point guard. He was already a point guard with this Rockets team anyway, so I had to make that position position change. The team's re-signed Dante Exum, which I think is going to be reasonable as the third string point guard / DJ Augustine is not long for this team. He'll probably get bought out or traded at some point. And they're locked into 4 starters: Porter, Green, Wood, and Tice. And then the 5th starter is either going to be Tate or Eric Gordon, most likely. If Gordon becomes the starter, I'll be moving his position to the 3. I guess Daniel House is also a contender to start, but wouldn't consider it likely given that Tate started over him anyway. So we're penciling Jalen Green as the Rookie of the Year favorite, given the amount of minutes that he's going to get in the role. And then behind him is Eric Gordon until there's a trade or something. And Josh Christopher. Armani Brooks is on an Exhibit 10, so he's probably going down to the G League / waiting for a 2-way. Kyrie Thomas is on a non-guaranteed deal. He's probably going to get cut in training camp, but I can see him making his way onto the roster if they decide to cut like Augustine, or if they start like Eric Gordon and somebody else moves on. If they move Gordon over to the 3, that opens up a couple minutes for Thomas, as Josh Christopher's honestly a little raw and I don't think is super ready to handle the NBA as of yet. They got 3 guys at the 3. They're like one of the weaker small forward tandems in the league. Christian Wood started all of last year at the 5, but similar to like other players like Kristaps Porzingis, Al Horford, etc., moving back to the 4. There's a lot of like undersized 5s that are making the transition back this year. I noticed Wood is going to be one of them, and I'm in favor of that, as his best minutes came with the Pistons 2 years ago as a 4, and they don't really have a ton of depth here. You see they got two guys on 2 ways. Usman Garuba, who's like a Draymond Green style rookie, and Kenyon Martin Jr., who's a very raw like second round pick and has the body of a 3. So Wood should get a ton of time at the 4, and at the 5 we've got Tice and Alperen Sengun, who has impressed during training camp thus far, and I think he's probably going to make the all-rookie first team this year. I'd pencil him in for that, given the role that he's going to have, and it's possible that he could, like, he's guaranteed 20 minutes a game as, like, Tice's backup, notwithstanding, like, injuries to anybody, but he could, in theory, like, if he's actually good, he's like a Nikola Jokic light. Like, if that holds up, he could very easily start over Tice. And if that's the best case scenario, like, he's gonna see his rating skyrocket in that event. But I'm pretty high on him going into the year. So I also, worth noting, I basically inverted Wood and Tice, as 2K had Tice at the power forward position, as that's what he played with the Chicago Bulls, but he was a starting 5 with the Celtics for the rest of his career, so I've got him penciled as a 5 rather than as a 4 next to Christian Wood. I think that's a more appropriate delineation. And Anthony Lamb I have listed as a 4 rather than a 3, as that's where he mostly played last year. You could make an argument for him being a 3, given that they got 4 guys at the 4. I guess I can make that change. I don't really care a ton. Obviously, these guys barely play anyway in the 2K game. It's really just for bookkeeping purposes. Going over the Spurs. They are a work in progress because their major, quote-unquote major, offseason acquisition was Thaddeus Young, replacing DeMar DeRozan. Young is not young. He is old. He is 33 years old, and they are rebuilding. So I expect him to get traded to a contender. That's what they prefer to do. And when you look at the depth chart for this team, like, geez, this is a mess. They signed Zach Collins last year, or this year. He missed all of last year. He doesn't have a ton of guaranteed money. He's signed for like 3 years and 22 million, but only something like 10 million of it is guaranteed. So they're taking a flyer on him. He's not going to be available until after Christmas. And I've got him still penciled in as a 4 rather than a 5 because that's where he's played most of his career. And it doesn't make a ton of sense to put him at the 5, given that they've got Hurdle, Eubanks, and Landale at the 5. All these guys have guaranteed contracts, and I wouldn't expect them to move on from any of them. Landale, who they just signed from Australia, he kind of like. Honestly, I just don't understand the Zach Collins signing. Like, period. Like, they gave him a lot more money than I think he could have gotten from anywhere else for him to sign the dotted line. But I guess they consider him like the long-term possible starter / backup once they move on from Thaddeus Young. Once they move on from Thaddeus Young, kind of opens things up a little bit. They have Luka Samanic as kind of filling the same role as Zach Collins, but he's barely played his first 2 years, and I think it's possible that he may just get cut also, unless he shows something during camp. Al-Farouq Aminu's kind of in the same boat as Thaddeus Young, like undersized 4. He's been hurt the past couple years, so he hasn't played a ton. Would prefer to join a contender at this point, and given that they have like 2 guaranteed contracts that need to be cut, I've got him penciled in as one of them. They re-signed Keita Bates-Diop from a 2-way contract to a standard contract. I've got him penciled in as like the other player that they're going to cut, just based on like how the depth chart looks right now. I read somebody said that like his re-signing might have been more of like a thank you rather than like a sign of him being with the team like long term. But yeah, if the sooner they're able to move on from Thaddeus Young, I think the more likely it is they hold on to Bates. I've got Keldon Johnson at the 3 rather than the 4 this year, as they moved on from DeMar DeRozan, and Thaddeus Young is definitively a 4 rather than a 3, so we can slide Keldon down. And I've got Doug McDermott also at the 3 rather than the 4, as kind of the same deal. Like, he was only starting at the 4 with the Pacers because Sabonis had to slide up to the 5, and they didn't really have a true backup 4 on the team. With the Spurs, I would anticipate him to play more 3 than 4, based on, like, once all this shit cleans out, then maybe I could make a case for moving him back to the 4, but based on the rest of the depth, I thought it was fine. I got Bryn Forbes penciled as the starting 2 guard on this team rather than Derek White. Derek White, I switched back from the 2 to the 1. As, again, you look at the roster, they don't have a backup point guard on this team. Trey Jones barely played last year, and he's on the. I consider him. If they're not going to cut Bates-Diop, they're cutting Trey Young. Or Trey Jones. I'm pretty sure. And Derek White, he did not start when the team had Bryn Forbes, and when you consider like the spacing of this team, like, if they're going to be playing like Thaddeus Young big minutes next to Pirtle, who doesn't shoot at all, they need as much shooting in the starting unit as they can get, with DeJounte Murray not being much of a shooter either. So I think it makes sense to have Forbes as the starter and Derek White kind of be the 6th man on this team, and go back to like his semi-natural point guard. You could, depending on how things break down, if Derek White does end up starting and we're moving then we're moving him back to the 2. I anticipate that like Lonnie Walker the fourth would probably get traded for like a backup point guard because they don't need they drafted Josh Primo who's raw and like not ready to contribute. Like if we consider White and Forbes like getting all the 2 guard minutes, then like there really isn't a place for Walker on this team. So they could move him to maybe a team like the Rockets for DJ Augustine or something like that. Something like that. Like they just need a filler like backup point guard. Because Jones is he's more a G leaguer than an NBA player at this point. Especially since like Devin Vassell, he might be considered more of a 2 than a 3 this year with the presence of McDermott. There's a lot to shake out. Like, check back next month, I guess, once the season starts, and we'll have a better idea. So going over to the Phoenix Suns. The main thing that I had to change with them is I moved Cam Johnson from the 4 to the 3. As just kind of based on their how their rotation shakes out. I also moved Dario Saric from the 5 to the 4. Even though he started, or he didn't start, but he played mostly the 5 behind DeAndre Ayton. However, based on the current depth chart for the Suns, with them signing JaVale McGee and then bringing back Frank Kaminsky, with the presence of McGee, I would like Saric would not play the 5 on this team, so I can see him playing like his natural 4. He's expected to miss the entire year with a torn ACL, I believe, but just a little bit of cleanup that I wanted to clarify. Like that's why I made this particular change, and they could use another 4 with Jalen Smith being the only alternative behind Crowder. So it might seem a little silly for me to be changing Cam Johnson's position, but I do expect Jalen Smith to play more this year than he did last year. And Jay Crowder, I just wanted to be very clear that he played like all power forward this year. He did not play any small forward whatsoever. So Cam Johnson could still get the lion's share of the backup power forward minutes based on how the rest of the roster is built. But I definitely want him playing ahead of like Abdel Nader at the 3. Like I think it makes more sense to consider Jalen Smith the backup 4 on this team than it does to consider Abdel Nader the backup 3 on this team. Other than that, everything kind of shakes out. Shamet's gonna take Javon Carter's place, and he's a pretty big upgrade from like the carousel of shooting guards that they had last year between Etuan Moore, Langston Galloway, and Javon Carter. Landry Shamet's just a more established option at this stage of his career. I think he's still only a 4th-year player. He's already played for 1, 2, 3. This is his 4th team in 4 years. So even though he's very valuable, he's also very tradable. Given like his role and like the contenders are always going to want him. And Chris Paul, I anticipate that he's going to play. They're going to be very careful with his minutes this year, as the Suns made the NBA Finals. Paul was a little banged up at the end of the playoff run, so they did not get much of an off-season relative to the other teams. So I think they'll be careful with him and maybe play a little bit more Elfrid Payton than they would otherwise like for the outset of the year. But I, in general, like the Payton addition. In general, he's definitely an NBA player. He's got his warts, but if any team's going to rehab his value, it's probably the Phoenix Suns. And I guess also worth noting, I had to switch Kaminsky's position from the 4 to the 5. I had to switch Hutchison from the 4 to the 3. And also had to switch Jalen Smith from the 5 to the 4. Okay. Going over to the OKC Thunder. There's not a ton I really want to discuss with this team. They are total rebuilding. I've got their rotation penciled in as like Shea, Dort, Giddey as a starting three rather than as a point guard. Baisley and Favors. And then their second unit is Maladone, Ty Jerome. So I had to switch him from point guard, I believe. Yeah, I did. Poku slash Kendrick Williams behind him. You can see I've got three positions for Poku, Roby, and then with Scala behind him. Wilson's on a camp deal. Diakite's on a partial guarantee. They claimed him off waivers from Milwaukee. Robinson Earl I've got at the 5 because that's where he played in college. I can anticipate both of these guys not making the team and then going down to the G League. These guys being the 4s. These guys being the 3s. Paul Watson's on a 2-way. Trey Mann, I had to switch his position from point guard. He's more of an undersized shooting guard. This is a pretty decent scorer. And I added Vit Krejci to the game. I got no idea what he looks like. Just want to reiterate that I don't do appearances or anything like that, as once these guys get added to the game, I will be downloading their player models from the 2K roster and uploading them here. But he missed all of last year with a torn ACL, and honestly still very raw, barely played in Europe. Also, this is a change I gotta make. I guess when I downloaded him, I did not adjust his height and weight. He is 6'8", 195, so a pretty big point guard in the mold of like a Sean Livingston. But yeah, given their flexibility, like they're just adding a bunch of guys with size and then figuring out what their positions are going to be later. Like Poku is the poster child for that at 7 foot 190. Who knows what he's going to look like 2 years from now? And Shea can play all three positions. All right, so the Minnesota Timberwolves basically did nothing during the offseason, aside from fire their GM at the end of it. Patrick Beverley, they got him in the Jarrett Culver trade, so that should be an upgrade. Basically, reprises Ricky Rubio's role as the backup here for D'Angelo Russell. Russell played more of the 2 than he did the 1 because he came back and came off the bench, I believe. Or no, he came back and then started next to Rubio once he was back, but he should be back to playing the 1 with Malik Beasley and then Anthony Edwards filling out the wing. Anthony Edwards, I had to switch from the 2 to the 3 to make sure that he starts. And that's pretty much it. That's all I had to change was just the Edwards. The Wolves did not have a lottery pick as they traded the farm to get D'Angelo Russell, so we'll see how that works out for them now that their entire roster is healthy. So going down to the Blazers, we came across a team that... Oh no, I didn't change one position. I moved Greg Brown from the 3 to the 4. He's kind of in the same mold as like Derrick Jones Jr. But based on the depth of this team, it didn't make sense. I thought to have 3 guys with guaranteed deals at the 3. Patrick Patterson's on a non-guaranteed deal. I do expect him to make the team, and then maybe I'll switch Greg Brown back for the 3 at that point. But he's got more of a 4's offensive game anyway. Marquise Chris, I think, also is on a non-guaranteed deal, but he was really good with the Warriors prior to getting hurt. I anticipate that he will make the team as like the 3rd-string center. And then one of Quinn Cook or Dennis Smith Jr. is probably going to make the team as one of the 2 backups for Dame Lillard. I would lean towards Quinn Cook as being the better option, given that he's a shooter. Dennis Smith Jr. probably has more upside, but given that the presence of Dame Lillard, he's not going to get any chance to really develop. So I can see him going down to like the G League or something and really getting an opportunity to flesh out his game. Otherwise, he's going to have to go to Europe. He just needs some playing time to realize his lottery talent. And Golden State, we had to do surgery to them big time. Yeah, okay. So Golden State, they are still without Klay Thompson, and they are currently without James Wiseman as he recovers from torn meniscus, I believe. So he's out at the outset. Kevon Looney's probably going to be the starting five, with Nemanja Bjelica behind him. Bjelica had to switch from the 4 to the 5, even though he's played mostly 4 for his career. With the Warriors, it's probably pretty clear he's going to be a 5. They don't have a ton of size on this team otherwise. Jordan Bell, non-guaranteed deal, not a given that he's going to make the team. They already have to get to make a cut beyond that, so I don't think he's two-way eligible anymore either. Yeah, he's played too many seasons. So if he's going to make the team, it's going to have to be on a standard deal. I've got Otto Porter at the 4, which is kind of where he mostly played last year. In a perfect world, he would be at the 3, but he's dealt with injuries the last couple of years, and he did not look good last year. Like, he was very slow, and I think, again, perfect world and perfect bill of health, he would be a 3, but this might be his new reality, and he's going to have to play the 4. Jonathan Kuminga, I think we're penciling in as a 4 also. He played 3 with the G League last year, but given his skill set, and also Steve Kerr's already talked about playing him as a 4, I think I've got him penciled as the 3rd string power forward. Probably not going to play a ton for this team, even though he was drafted in the lottery. Like, this team getting these lottery picks when they're at a time when they're trying to contend is really questionable value. I think they should have been trading some of them for established players. If you're going to go all in on the dynasty, you need to go all in, I think, and not do these half measures. Wiggins, I've got at the 3. Last year I had him at the 2 in the absence of Klay Thompson, but Klay's back, so we'll pencil him as the 3 for this year with Iguodala and Toscano behind him. I had both of these guys at 4s, but as you see, if we're considering Otto Porter a 4, then the power forward position is pretty crowded. If Porter's able to play in the 3, then I'd probably invert him and one of these two guys back. And then at the 2, things are a fucking mess with this team. So let's actually focus on the 1 first. Jordan Poole, I had to switch him from the 2 to the 1, even though major market team that 2K loves, and they don't even know the depth chart or where guys play for this team. But Poole was the backup point guard behind Steph Curry for pretty much the entire season last year. Or at least the second half of the year once they moved on from Brad Wanamaker, who just did not fit. So he's projected to be the point guard, the backup point guard for this team moving forward, plus playing a little bit of 2 next to Steph, but we're penciling him as the backup 1. And Gary Payton II, he's normally I would pencil him as a cut. However, he's got a partial guarantee that makes me think that he's possibly going to make the team. There's some monkey wrenches in that we're going to cover in a second, but for right now, I've got him here, and just because of, I would normally consider him a 3 or a 2, more so than a 1. I'm only moving him at the 1 just because of how the depth chart is at present. If he makes the team, he's probably going to be a 2. But let's cover the 2. So Klay, as we mentioned, is still out. He's probably not going to play until January or something. The team signed Langston Galloway and Avery Bradley. as to play for them in training camp, and both of these guys I would consider better players than Gary Payton II. So even though Gary Payton II has his partial guarantee, it's possible that they keep one of these two guys, if not both, over him. Damian Lee's on a non-guaranteed deal, but I think his sister's married to like Steph. He's related to Steph Curry. Like he ain't going anywhere. He's part of the fam. He already started for them 2 years ago when Klay Thompson was initially down with the injury. He's a vet. Like it's pretty safe to pencil him as the backup two guard. No matter what happens, he'll probably start, if anything, at the outset of the year until Klay is ready to return. They drafted Moses Moody, who was actually more of a 3 than a 2 last year. But with the Warriors, we're going to count him as a 2, given the 3 seems pretty stable. And Michael Mulder, I just switched him from the 1 to the 2. He's more of a 2 than a 1. He's not a playmaker at all. He plays off the ball, and like the theory of him is like he's going to be able to play the same sets as Steph Curry, but like when Steph Curry's healthy, he can't take the court, and and like they just don't need him. I think so. He's on a non-guaranteed deal. I like consider him. I think most people would consider him a better player or like more valuable. He's got a better name recognition, I would say, than like Gary Payton II. But given what he brings to the team, I'm not really seeing the fit. And I have him here on like a two-way deal because he's technically two-way eligible, and that's the only way I can see him making the team. Because even if he beats out Gary Payton II for a roster spot, I don't think there's a world where he beats out Avery Bradley and Langston Galloway. So if they want to keep him in the organization, it's going to be on a two-way deal if he clears waivers. It's not a given that he would clear waivers, as I do think that he's a reasonable option for some team out there, but that's kind of where I'm at with the two-guard spot. Everything's kind of slack-jawed. Also worth noting, Avery Bradley, I would consider him a 1 if he makes the team. If he makes the team, he's probably making it over Gary Payton II, and then just given the presence of all these two guards, I think that would make sense to just switch him over. Like, I don't know. But he's also not really a 1 offensively either. He doesn't run the offense at all. So if anything, he's like a good player to have next to Jordan Poole, who's going to be a more ball dominant player and could use some defense next to him. But yeah, I think Langston Galloway makes a ton more sense on this team than like Moses Moody. I don't understand like them drafting these guys in the lottery and then not. They should not have kept these picks. They should have definitely moved them for somebody who was able to contribute, because if they want to win, they're going to want veteran players. They can't afford to dick around here. Like, if they're going to continue the dynasty and try to win championships, like, the time's running out. Steph's 33, Klay's 31, whatever they got. Like, Draymond Green's not getting better as he gets older. So that's how I feel about that team. And then finishing off with the Washington Wizards, there wasn't really a ton to change here. Aaron Holiday played mostly the 2 last year, given like the weird lineups that the Pacers had. Obviously, they were playing like a bigger shooting guard or a bigger point guard with like Malcolm Brogdon, so they could get away with playing Holiday at the 2 a little more. But also, he was playing the 2 in like lineups with TJ McConnell, so he was playing out of position for most of the year. With the Wizards, he's going to be able to play his natural position, but he is blocked by Spencer Dinwiddie, who's kind of in the same like Malcolm Brogdon type of archetype, and Raul Neto, who had a pretty good year last year. So he's got like a little bit of an uphill battle for some playing time. Other than that, at the 2, we've got Beal and KCP pretty clearly. KCP, I think, is still like a starting level player, but in the interim, he's going to get a lot of minutes at the 2, and Bradley Beal's probably going to play a little bit at the 3 to make room for him, as they're not like super deep at the 3. They've got Kuzma, a rookie, and then Deni Avdija. These two guys are probably going to split the backup minutes between them. Kispert's more of a shooting specialist, and Avdija's got more of an all-around game, so depending on what they need more out of their backup 3 spot, you can see them, the rotation breaking down that way. And Davis Bertans, one of the worst contracts given out a couple years ago, making like $16 million a year to be a backup shooting specialist. Hachimura is going to be the starter with Bertans behind him. He's really more of like a Peja Stojakovic, kind of like 6'10", 220, so like calling him a power forward is a little bit of a stretch to begin with. And it's possible that you could make an argument for him starting if he has this. If they want to really max out on shooters, I could see a world where he starts over Kuzma, and then we're counting Kuzma as like the backup 4 ahead of Hachimura, or maybe Hachimura gets hurt and they have to start Kuzma at the 4, things of that nature. And Thomas Bryant is probably going to miss like the first month of the year recovering from his injury, so Dan Gafford is going to continue to start, and Montrezl Harrell is penciled in as like the 6th man. Probably a pretty reasonable shot at 6th man of the year, given how crappy the rest of the bench is. Worth noting that like 77 overall is way too low for a player of Harrell's stature, but I only wanted to focus on the positions and not the ratings in this roster, as so far that's all I've really worked on. Really the only team that I did the ratings for was the 76ers thus far. So my next, I guess my next podcast / blog post, or whatever you call these things, video, is going to be talking about the ratings for these teams. There's a lot that I think could be improved upon, as now that I've got the positions really locked down, we can start to play around with the ratings and really adjust the depth charts of these teams. Just going through, like, Kuminga, I expect to be out of the rotation, and he's in because his rating is higher than like Jordan Poole, Bjelica, Damian Lee, etc. So there's a lot of adjustments that need to be made. See if I can find other more egregious examples. Yeah, like Landry Shamet is the 12th man on the Suns. Like, get the fuck out of here, 2K. So that's what you can expect to look for next time. Thank you guys for watching, as I broke down all the changes that I've made so far in my roster regarding the positions. And you saw at the beginning of the video how you can download my roster for the PS4. If you want to follow me on Twitter, I'm at Real2KInsider, and you can get updated on 2K roster news and just general NBA news, particularly with relating to like transactions, player positions, and all the nitty-gritty stuff of like NBA depth charts. I take a personal interest in, as it is relevant to the game itself. So thanks again for watching, and keep an eye out for my next video. Follow, like, subscribe, etc., as that it's all helpful. Peace.